Chapter 91. Then I'll go chop him up, second update. Please give me a monthly pass. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zaraki Kenpachi grinned, all teeth and excitement. Again. Let me die by your hand. Or, let me be the one to kill you. Naruto watched him, calm as could be. Kagura's inner eye confirmed the truth of his words, but I've got no reason to keep fighting. The power Azura gave me has gotten plenty to chew on. It needs time to settle, digest all that, and get stronger. Fighting you was a real experience. Naruto gave him a smile. Zaraki Kenpachi charged, sword raised. He's beat up and worn out, and he can't control his spiritual pressure worth a damn. The air cracks like a spiderweb every time his foot hits the ground. His roar drowned out the hum of his spiritual pressure. But that's the end of the line. Naruto clapped his hands together. They're getting impatient. Golden chains burst out from behind him, dancing like tails. With a whoosh, they shot towards Zaraki Kenpachi, twisting and wrapping, binding his limbs every which way. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes went wide. No more slashing. This kind of spirit power crap ain't as fun as a good brawl. He struggled hard. The damage from their sword fight had left him worse off than before. Even so, the golden chains creaked, about to break. Naruto's expression didn't change as he began to chant. Binding art number 61, 6 bars of light. 0.6 golden beams shot from his palms, pinning Zaraki Kenpachi's hands and slamming into his waist and abdomen. Binding art number 75, quintuple iron pillars. 0.5 massive iron pillars appeared in the sky and plummeted like meteors, smashing down on Zaraki Kenpachi's head and limbs, burying him in the ground. Naruto held out his hands again. White cloth strips flew from his sleeves, wrapping the spiky-haired man from head to toe. Zaraki Kenpachi's uncovered eyes stared at Naruto in disbelief. You're not even tired yet, why stop fighting? The battle was over. Naruto sheathed his sword and lowered his spiritual pressure. The spectators finally stepped forward to carry away the injured and clean up the mess. A few grim reapers in black rushed over, pretending to be all important. They reached out to grab Zaraki Kenpachi, but Kai reached out a hand grabbed one of them by the wrist. A golden whip sent the rest flying. The man who was grabbed turned around. It was Captain Uzumaki of the 7th Division, the guy who just fought the sealed dude. His face, usually so gentle, was stone cold. 2nd Division, what's the meaning of this? Captain Uzumaki. Someone hurried over. It was a female Shinigami with short hair and wearing a sleeveless captain's coat. We're taking custody of this criminal. Naruto turned to look at her. She was Soifon, Yoruichi's successor and the current captain of the 2nd Division. You're trying to take my trophy? He said calmly. Soifon was taken aback. A dangerous prisoner like this has to be turned over to the Central 46S Secret Detention Unit, per regulations. Really? Naruto tossed the man he was holding. I don't agree. Soifon narrowed her eyes, lowered her stance, and reached for the hilt of her sword, but before she could say a word, everything blurred. The golden figure was gone. A hand stretched from behind her, clamped down on her hand, and shoved the blade back into its sheath. Yoruichi's successor hasn't learned half her charm. The voice was right next to her ear. Soifon whirled around, shocked. When? That was fast. After a fight like that, he could still move like that. Don't talk about that woman who abandoned me. The affection in his voice stabbed her deeper than his speed. She glared at Naruto, all anger. Naruto smiled slightly. I'll handle Zaraki. He walked past Soifon. 2nd Division, go back. Soifon didn't say anything. She stared at Naruto's back, teeth grinding. Basemon. Naruto called out. Katsubaki Basemon appeared instantly at his captain's side. Count up all the injured team members from this mission and get them all the paid leave they need, Naruto ordered softly. If they have work to do, assign it to the uninjured members. If we're short-handed, borrow some from the 6th and 10th Divisions. And make sure those replacements get the same pay. Katsubaki Basemon nodded respectfully. Yes, Captain Uzumaki. Naruto tilted his head, looking at the pink-haired little girl surrounded by the 7th and 2nd Divisions. Bring her over here. I'm taking her with me. Katsubaki Basemon looked over, he raised his hand, a 7th Division member brought the pink-haired girl forward, she wasn't scared at all. She stood on tiptoes and looked at Naruto. Little blondie, you're a good guy. Kenny hasn't been this happy in ages. Naruto, not even 5'4", was still taller than this little pink-haired girl, who barely reached his waist. Naruto reached down, grabbed her by the collar, and said, "This battle made me happy too. But you did hurt a lot of my team members, so you're still in trouble." "What's your name?" That the pink-haired girl hung obediently in Naruto's grip. "Yachiru, Kusajishi Yachiru. That's the name Kenny gave me." Naruto nodded, reached out with his other hand, and the cloth strips binding Zaraki Kenpachi flew back into his hand. Then, he dragged the two of them and vanished in a flash. Soifon clenched her fists. People who don't listen are so annoying. The 4th Division headquarters. "Naruto, I heard you took care of the intruders." Unohana Retsu smiled, her eyes curious as she looked at the two people Naruto hauled in. "These them?" A cute little girl with pink hair, a guy wrapped in bandages from head to toe. Naruto nodded. "An interesting guy. He was badly hurt, so I brought him here for the 4th Division to patch him up." Unohana Retsu waved her hand, telling Naruto to lay the bandaged man on the bed. "Not a bad guy." "Not bad, just loves to fight." Naruto replied. That gave Unohana Retsu a pause. Naruto reached out and removed the seal. He held back his attacks and didn't kill anyone, or I'd have handed him over to the detention unit. Fighting him was a blast. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I'm hoping he can stay with the Godi I-13. The cloth strips fell away, freeing the person inside. Zaraki Kenpachi was badly injured, and the seal had weakened his spiritual pressure. He was still unconscious. His face, when he wasn't all worked up, was almost normal. "It's him," Unohana Retsu said softly. "When he said my heart is full of fighting, I had a hunch." Sure enough, it was really him. Naruto turned around, a little surprised. "You know Captain Unohana? Someone I met a long time ago." Unohana Retsu's voice was full of memories. "I wasn't the 4th Division captain back then. He was always meant to join the Godi I-13, but I didn't think it would be like this." Naruto nodded, thoughtful. He glanced back and forth between Unohana Retsu and Zaraki Kenpachi, then stopped at Kusajishi Yachiru. That little girl's hair was pink. "Naruto, what are you going to do with him?" Unohana asked. Naruto thought for a moment. "No one got killed. For breaking into the Seriidii, he'll get a few years in the 9th Division jail at most. When he gets out, I'll recommend him to the Godi I-13. He says he doesn't hold back, but his spiritual pressure is off the charts. Top notch, no doubt." Unohana Retsu smiled. "The captain will like him. He's very capable. And maybe there are other options." Naruto stared at Zaraki Kenpachi, who was lying on the bed. "The captain would like him. Maybe not, I've got a feeling this guy's going to give him a headache." He left Zaraki Kenpachi and Yachiru Kusajishi at the 4th Division headquarters and went back to the 7th. The inner courtyard was half destroyed, and a lot was waiting for him. "I also need to write a report on today's events and submit it to the captain." 3 days later, Naruto went to the 4th Division headquarters. Zaraki Kenpachi's physical fitness was amazing. He was already out of bed and moving around. "Little blondie." Kusajishi Yachiru greeted him cheerfully. "You came to see Kenny." Zaraki Kenpachi's greeting was more direct. "Hey, kid, where's my sword? Did you take it?" "You're a prisoner now," Naruto said seriously. "I'm holding your blade until I decide what to do with you. She told me." Zaraki Kenpachi sat cross-legged on the bed, head bowed. "All I gotta do is join the Godi I-13, right?" Naruto nodded. "Kenpachi, is the name only the captain of the 11th Division can have?" Zaraki Kenpachi went on. "I heard if I kill him, I can be the new 11th Division captain. Does that mean I'd get into the Godi I-13? Naruto was stunned. He turned around. He felt like there should be a woman with long black hair standing there right now. that was not an idea Zaraki Kenpachi, who barely knew anything about the Seriidii, would come up with. He's a captain too. As strong as you. Zaraki Kenpachi tilted his head, his voice getting meaner. Killing him would be interesting. He confidently held out his hand. Give me the sword. Naruto raised his hand. That's your final decision. Then I hope you become my colleague. His palm landed on the table. The technique unfolded, and a scroll appeared. He unfurled it and took out the sealed sword. Zaraki Kenpachi snatched it up and raised it high. Then I'm going to go kill that Kenpachi now. Kusajishi Yachiru jumped onto Zaraki Kenpachi's shoulders, turned around, and waved to Naruto. Thanks, little blondie. Chapter 92 A Bad Premonition, 3rd Update. Please give me a monthly vote. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The current captain of the 11th Division is a big, heavy-set black guy named Kenpachi Kugashiro. He's a real piece of work, and he's got a terrible reputation. Pretty much nobody in the Godai 13, especially in the 11th Division, has anything good to say about him. Before Naruto even joined the Godai 13, he'd heard stories about this guy from Hirako Mako. Hirako's take on him was, how did a moron like that become a captain? That even Captain Yukitake and Uncle Shunsui would get all awkward and hesitant when his name came up. They couldn't even think of one good thing to say about this Kenpachi. After Naruto became captain himself, he saw what they meant. Captain Mako nailed it. Naruto watched Zaraki Kenpachi head out, totally confident in his abilities. That punk Ki Yenching didn't stand a chance. Sure enough, less than an hour later, the news came. Zaraki Kenpachi had taken him down. He killed Kigashima in front of everyone, but nobody considered it a crime. Team 11 is a different beast in the Seriidii. Other division captains have to go through all sorts of reviews and evaluations before they get the job, but for the 11th Division, a combat team, it's winner take all. The toughest fighter becomes the captain, and they earn the title of Kenpachi. From that day forward, Zaraki Kenpachi was the new captain of the 11th Division, and all that stuff he'd done before, forcing his way into the Seriidii, hurting a bunch of Shinigami, and trashing buildings. Normally, that's a huge no-no, but if you're a captain, you can get away with it. Captain Yamamoto's punishment was to make Kenpachi Zaraki pay for all the medical bills for the injured Shinigami and the cost of repairing the damage. It added up to like 50 or 60 years worth of a captain's salary. But Zaraki Kenpachi didn't sweat it. Money meant nothing to him. If he's hungry, he just finds someone to mooch off of. The 4th and 7th divisions are good places to start. Then there's this little pink-haired girl, Yachiru Kusaka, who somehow ended up as the vice-captain. It wasn't that Zaraki Kenpachi was playing favorites, the kid just straight up fought her way in. She went from 5th seat all the way up to vice-captain, cutting down anyone in her path. The original vice-captain was so traumatized, he transferred to the 4th division and was thinking about switching teams altogether. So, all in all, the 11th division took a serious hit. Their captain died, and half a dozen officers were seriously injured, but the arrival of Kenpachi Zaraki and Yachiru Kusaka breathed new life into the Seriidii, even if it was a bit chaotic. Now, the biggest headache for Teams 7 and 10 was keeping the new captain of Team 11 in his own damn building instead of wandering around with a sword, constantly challenging people to fight. Compared to that, the vice-captain was practically an angel. She just pulled pranks and could be bribed with candy. Still, it was a shame. Why did such a cute little girl have to hang around with a guy like Zaraki Kenpachi? It would be awesome if she were with Captain Uzumaki. Naruto was definitely feeling the pressure. He really didn't want to fight Zaraki Kenpachi right now. The power of Azura was still simmering from their last fight, and he needed time to let it all sink in. Instead of pointless brawls, he wanted to keep researching the 4 elephant seals and time and space ninjutsu while he digested. But Zaraki Kenpachi didn't seem to care. 7th Division Captain's office, bang, the door flew open. Zaraki Kenpachi's eager, intense face popped in. Uzumaki, let's throw down. Let's go. He grabbed Naruto, trying to drag him up, but Kusaka Yachiru grabbed onto his coat to keep him from being carried away. That's the 7th door this month, Naruto said, looking up and sighing. Zaraki waved his sword. Don't worry about that. Just take it out of my paycheck. You still owe SpecialAbilities 57 years, Naruto said, not missing a beat. Then take it out of my paycheck, Yachiru piped up, clinging to Zaraki Kenpachi's back. Naruto shook his head and pulled a jar of Jinpei candy out of his desk drawer. Yachiru's eyes lit up, and she cheered, little son's the best. Let's fight. Zaraki Kenpachi kept pushing, why don't we just leave all this boring stuff to the others? Naruto stopped and glanced back and forth between the two of them, a captain and a vice-captain who spent all day wandering the SpecialAbilities instead of doing their jobs. Those poor third seats on their team were working overtime. I've got things to do, Naruto said. If we're gonna fight. He took stock of the power still brewing inside him. It would take a while for this portion to be digested. Kenpachi Zaraki's face was tense with anticipation, waiting for the end of the sentence. He was practically itching to drag the blonde kid out from behind the desk. 1 year from now, Naruto finished. Zaraki Kenpachi's face fell. 1 year. He'd been waiting long enough, and his fighting spirit was at a fever pitch. You can go find the other captains, Naruto suggested. Zaraki Kenpachi looked even more bummed. The ones who look interesting won't agree to fight, and the others. He shook his head. Not every captain is as fun as you. Most captains aren't like you. I was wondering how strong this Kenpachi guy could be. He sounded disappointed. It was too easy to cut down Gue Yencheng. He'd been taken out in just a few hits. There's one captain you haven't found yet, Naruto pointed out. You could go find the captain commander. Zaraki Kenpachi looked surprised and spat out a name, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. The captain commander is an elder who's always willing to guide the younger generation, Naruto said, with a sly smile. Go find him. We'll fight again in a year. Zaraki Kenpachi perked up. Alright, where's the first division building? Naruto pointed in a direction. Kenpachi Zaraki jumped toward the window. Yachiru Kasuka, hugging her candy bowl, jumped on his back, and waved goodbye, except, they just walked out of the room, and Naruto had pointed them in the right direction, but as soon as they hit the ground, they looked around and headed off in the completely wrong direction. That night, at an izakaya, thanks to Kairaku Shunsui and the others. Naruto had developed the habit of coming here for a drink during breaks. Of course, he didn't drink alcohol, just milk or juice. Jin and Byakuya were there too. They didn't come as often as Naruto. Jin didn't really like hanging out with anyone but Naruto, and Byakuya, as the heir to the Kachiki family, was supposed to be above such things. The 6th Division's got a mission coming up, Byakuya Kachiki said, his tone serious. Ikamaru Jin grinned and asked, the 6th Division actually has a mission? It was a simple question, but it sounded kind of weird coming from him. Kachiki Byakuya narrowed his eyes, of course. The 6th Division has duties and responsibilities. Naruto was intrigued. The 6th Division was the noble squad, whose job was to guard the nobility and the central 46 chambers, which, in the SpecialAbilities, basically meant Noble Street. To be honest, he'd never seen the 6th Division do anything. Most of the time, they were just hanging around in their building. The 6th Squadron isn't a place for freeloaders, Kachiki Byakuya continued. We don't have the same heavy workload as other squadrons, so we regularly send out teams to the real world to eliminate excess hollows and train our combat skills. Is Byakuya going too? Naruto asked. Halfway through his milk, Byakuya Kachiki shook his head. I'm at a crucial point in my training. I can't get away. My grandfather and father don't want me to go either. My father's leading the team this time. His condition seems to have gotten worse lately. He was worried about that. His father was Kachiki Sojin, the vice-captain of the 6th Division. He was a good guy, but he'd always been sickly. Naruto raised a hand to reassure him. It's just killing hollows in the real world. Don't worry, it'll be fine. When he said this world, he thought of the soul burial exercise. Back then, the gate to the world had closed, and a bunch of high-level hollows had appeared. If it hadn't been for him, that group of students would have died for nothing, but nothing like that had happened since. Team 6 shouldn't run into that, right? And with the vice-captain leading the team, there shouldn't be any major problems, even if there were high-level hollows. Maybe it was Byakuya's mood rubbing off, but Naruto felt a twinge of worry. A week later, the 6th team set off. Everything was normal in the SpecialAbilities. until that evening, a third seat from the 2nd Division showed up, looking panicked. Captain Uzumaki, on the captain's orders, you need to go to the 1st Division building immediately. There's been a malfunction with the gate to the real world, and we've lost all contact with the 6th Division. Naruto jumped to his feet, his bad feeling was coming true. Has every captain been notified? Naruto asked, taking a deep breath to calm down. The 2nd Division officer nodded, yes. Two faces flashed in Naruto's mind. The last time this happened, Kyuubi had sensed a powerful presence nearby. What about this time? Could it be them too? I understand, he said, jumping out the window and taking off. The 2nd Division officer called after him, Captain Uzumaki, the 1st Division building isn't that way. But Naruto ignored him and sped off. Chapter 93 The Disappearance of Tosen Yao, First Update. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. 9th Division Barracks, the 3rd seat barked out orders, and the soldiers lined up, jittery. Something was up, another invasion of the Soul Society, it seemed. He stopped mid-sentence, looking up, astonished. An incredible spiritual pressure was bearing down on them, fast, just the aura made him tremble. He forced his hand onto his sword hilt, the other soldiers tensing, on high alert. Then, a golden figure landed, and relief washed over them. They snapped to attention, greeting him respectfully. The blonde hair gave him away, Captain Uzumaki of the 7th Division. Young, but one of the Godai 13's most popular captains. Naruto scanned the area, sensing neither Kamimura Sajin's nor Tosen Kanami's presence. He knew his way around, but instead of heading straight to the 1st Division barracks, he had a more pressing need to confirm something. Did Captain Kamimura and Vice Captain Tosen head to the 1st Division's barracks? Naruto asked, his gaze fixed on the 3rd seat. The captain got the word and left already, the 3rd seat replied. Not sure about Vice Captain Tosen, but he probably went too. Naruto eyed him. Not sure. The 3rd seat looked uneasy, nodding. Haven't seen the vice captain since this morning, he stammered. The captain doesn't know where the vice captain is either. The captain just ordered that after seeing Vice Captain Tosen, he should immediately go to the 1st Division's barracks. Naruto questioned the others. Their stories matched. No one had seen Tosen since morning. Naruto's expression darkened. Had he disappeared that morning? The warning from the 2nd Division was solidifying the suspicion forming in his mind. He turned and left. He skipped the 5th Division's barracks. At a meeting like this, the 5th Division's captain, as a rescue team member, would definitely be there. The 1st Division's barracks, the vice-captains waited outside the meeting room. 11 of them were present, minus the 3rd and 9th Division's vice-captains. The 3rd Division had no captain, so the vice-captain was temporarily in charge. And he was in the meeting room. Tosen Kaname was still a no-show. The captain of the 6th Division arrived with the 3rd seat, Byakuya Kuchiki. He stood apart, alone, frowning, looking grim. Naruto pushed the door open and entered. Inside, all the captains were there, including Aizen Sosuke. Captain Uzumaki, you're late, Captain General Yamamoto said. Naruto apologized, taking his place. The Captain General looked grave. Unbelievable. Another gate's been blocked, he said heavily. The last time was 20 years ago. And it's happened again so soon. This is a challenge to the Godai 13's authority. It also affects the Soul Society's control over the human world, a critical issue. Therefore, I'm selecting 3 captains to investigate in the human world after the gate's repaired. He paused, his gaze lingering on the 6th Division's captain, Kuchiki Jinrei, before continuing. Captain of the 5th Division, Aizen Sosuke, Captain of the 9th Division, Kamimura Sajin, Captain of the 11th Division, Kenpachi Zaraki. Those 3. Before the order was finalized, Naruto spoke up, interrupting. Captain, I request to join the operation. Captain Yamamoto's face darkened slightly. Captain Uzumaki, this isn't the time for rash decisions. I have good reasons, Naruto insisted. I witnessed the last gate blockage. Furthermore, I suspect this incident is connected to the Hollow incident decades ago. As the investigator in charge of that incident, I believe it's vital that I go support the team and investigate as soon as possible. Captain Yamamoto's eyes narrowed, several captains looked surprised. Naruto tilted his head, while Aizen Sosuke's face remained mostly unchanged, even though the Captain Hollow incident from that year had been officially attributed to Urahara Kisuke's research by the 46th chamber. Many captains didn't buy that truth. Captain Yamamoto looked at him, a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. In that case, with such good reasons, Captain Uzumaki of the 7th Division will replace Captain Zaraki of the 11th Division. Kenpachi Zaraki frowned. So you don't need me to go chop people? Captain Yamamoto glanced at him, ignoring him completely, and continued making arrangements. The 3rd and 11th Divisions will prepare for support. The order was given, the captains filed out of the meeting room. Byakuya Kuchiki approached him, silent, looking at his grandfather. The captain has assigned 3 captains to provide support, Kuchiki Jinryo said softly. Captain Uzumaki is one of them. Byakuya Kuchiki paused, looking at Naruto, who was shorter than him. Byakuya, I've been through something like this before, Naruto said. 2 hollows showed up back then, so it should be similar this time. With Vice Captain Kuchiki's skills, 2 hollows shouldn't cause him too much trouble. Byakuya Kuchiki nodded, but said nothing. Naruto looked at him, then at Kuchiki Jinrei. Captain Uzumaki, please proceed, the Kuchiki family head said, managing a smile. My grandson isn't so weak. I'll explain everything to him. Naruto nodded and left with Katsubaki Raneman. A few minutes later, they stood before the Chuanjia Gate. The 12th Division and the Kidoshu were still working on repairs. The 3 teams were ready to go. Has Vice Captain Tosen been found? Naruto asked Kamimura Sajin. Behind him were the 3 seats from the 9th Division's barracks. Kamimura Sajin frowned, his ears drooping. No, I haven't been able to find NaN. He didn't leave a message about where he was going. Naruto murmured, really? Kamimura Sajin turned. I heard you went to the 9th Division's barracks when you got the order, Captain Naruto. Looking for NaN, right? Naruto looked into the big dog's eyes. Vice Captain Tosen is a good friend of yours. Kamimura Sajin nodded immediately. NaN is my best friend. He paused, adding, Captain Naruto is different from Captain Yamamoto. I admire you both greatly. Admiration and friendship were 2 different things. Naruto remained silent, but Kamimura Sajin seemed to sense something, saying quietly, is something going to happen? I'm not sure yet, Naruto said, his voice heavy. He glanced at Aizen. The 5th Division captain had his head down, seemingly deep in thought. Naruto frowned. He hadn't had a chance to properly greet Sosuke today. He felt like he was being too quiet. Jin noticed Naruto's gaze and grinned at him, just then. The gates repaired. The frog-like 12th Division Chief, Yuki Shu announced. The 3 captains should prepare. As he spoke, the red doors swung open. Let's go. Naruto said, the black hell butterfly fluttering before his eyes, guiding the way through the gate. In the human world, Wakayama Prefecture, Koyasan, the largest cemetery in Japan. Already heavy with yin energy, it was now permeated with an aura of demons running wild. In a world invisible to ordinary people, the situation was even more bizarre. Several death gods, dressed in black shihakusho, stood in a tight circle, back to back, staring nervously at their surroundings, but only thick fog surrounded them. It was like they were facing off against empty air, but the scattered bodies among the woods and tombstones left no doubt, the enemy was real. Vice Captain Kuchiki, we still can't send out a distress signal, one said, trying to keep his voice steady, but failing to hide his panic. Damn, what kind of guys are these? Another's emotions were on the verge of breaking. They had thought it was a routine mission. But something had been off from the start. There weren't many hollows on the mountain, and they were weak, just-born types with little power. This defied the common sense of a spirit-heavy land. Then, they had been ambushed by invisible enemies. Injured team members soon surged with hollow energy, went berserk, and attacked their teammates, and this hollowification was contagious. The Grim Reapers attacked by hollowified members would also become hollowified. They were dying in a frenzy of mutual attacks. In just over 10 minutes, the team had dwindled from dozens to only a handful. The man called Vice Captain looked calmer. There have been gate blockages before, he said. He had a face similar to Kuchiki Byakuya, but more mature, with softer features. His tone was soothing. The blockade won't last long. It's been almost half an hour now, so the gate should open soon. We just need to. He didn't get to finish. Suddenly, a bone-colored, viscous liquid erupted from one of them, oozing from his nose and mouth, eating away at his face. He was turning into a hollow. What? We confirmed he wasn't injured. Kuchiki Sojin said, startled, waving his hand. Break formation. As he issued the order, the hollowified death god lunged at the nearest person with a sword. Kuchiki Sojin frowned. He raised his own blade to parry, but the hollowified death god easily knocked him aside. The bone mask completed, the crazed Grim Reaper raised his sword high, but at that critical moment, a golden chain snaked through the air, binding the hollowified Grim Reaper, whipping it around and smashing it away. More to come today. I'll try to write more. Chapter 94. It's so ugly, Tosen. Second update. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. The savior's here. Kuchiki Sojin, and the few remaining Shinigami, all looked toward the golden chains. In the darkness, a shock of golden hair shone. The sight of it invigorated them, bringing a sudden sense of relief. It was Captain Naruto Uzumaki of the 7th Division. Two other captains stood behind him, each with distinctive features. One had a dog's head, the captain of the 9th Division, the other wore glasses, the captain of the 5th Division. All three looked grim, their gazes fixed on the Shinigami bound by the golden chains. Is that the hollow? Kamamura Sajin stared at the writhing, bone-colored goo, his voice heavy. That's seriously messed up. Naruto frowned. This guy's transformation was different from what they'd seen with Hirako Mako, more violent. It seemed, the bone fluid hadn't solidified, and it was tearing apart the Shinigami's body and will. Naruto flashed to his side, but before he could act, the hollow completely consumed him, and the bone fluid vanished. Was he hollowified for long? Naruto asked, staring at the corpse. Kuchiki Sojin shook his head. No, the change was recent. He paused, then spoke quickly, watch out. There's an invisible enemy hiding here. The 6th Division soldiers only started changing after being attacked and wounded by him. And he's still here. Naruto's eyes narrowed. You sure? Nagasawa and the other seated officers of the 6th haven't turned, Kuchiki Sojin said firmly. And the soldiers all changed within 2 or 3 minutes after being injured. He was just attacked. Before he finished, Naruto clapped his hands together. Vajra chain. Dozens of golden chains erupted from behind him, lashing out in every direction. The enemy was invisible, not formless. Eyes and senses couldn't catch him, but his attacks could be detected. The seemingly delicate golden chains could easily slice through a tree as thick as a man. The sound of impacts echoed across the mountain. Naruto and Kurama, working as one, blanketed the area with their senses, analyzing every subtle difference in each strike. Where is he? Naruto whirled around. To his left, a golden chain bent in a strange arc. It should have passed straight through the air, but something invisible was blocking it. That's him. Naruto drew his sword and charged forward, shouting, Kamamura, get the 6th Division back to safety. I found him. His spiritual pressure spiked, disrupting the air. He brought his sword down with brutal force. The invisible man raised his own sword to meet the blow. Sparks flew. Why so shy? Show yourself. I already know who you are. Naruto gritted his teeth. With hardly a pause, he drew his other sword and stabbed upward at a sharp angle, aiming for the chest. Clang. The hidden man was skilled, easily parrying the attack. The question seemed to work. The hidden figure flickered and became visible. It's you. Naruto's eyes narrowed. It was a tall, dark-skinned man wearing goggles that obscured his eyes. Kamamura Sajin, who was escorting the 6th Division soldiers away, turned to see the figure, disbelief on his face. How could it be him? It was Tosen Kaname, the current vice-captain of the 9th Division. Tosen Kaname remained silent, simply raising his hand and waving it gently. Several black cavities opened in the sky, countless heads flew out, just like during the soul burial internship. Years ago, Naruto gritted his teeth. The anger that had been building inside him for over a decade erupted. He continued to swing his sword, but his attack passed through a phantom. The figure in front of him was a fake. Naruto spun around and yelled, "Watch out, he's coming for you." Kamamura Sajin immediately drew his sword. Aizen stepped forward to protect the soldiers behind him, but at that moment, a blade slipped silently through Kichiki Sojin's body. Bone-colored liquid surged from the wound, crawling toward his face. Kamamura swung his sword at the man who had suddenly appeared in the crowd. He slashed at his friend. "Why? How could it be you?" he asked, his voice full of compassion, anger, and disbelief. "How could you do this?" Naruto's eyes widened. He's that fast. Even Yoruchi couldn't move that silently. He got past the guards of 2 captains. But now wasn't the time to dwell on it. Naruto rushed to Kichiki Sojin, opened his 5 fingers, and unleashed his spiritual power, branding his lower abdomen. For symbol seal, the spell spread from his fingertips, wrapping and sealing the hollow's power. His earlier guess had been right. The 4-symbol seal could suppress the hollow's influence. The seal stabilized, the bone-colored mucus faded from Kichiki Sojin's face, and his breathing steadied. Aizen stared at Naruto's hand and the intricate spells. The lenses of his glasses reflected the moonlight, obscuring his eyes. Naruto looked up. Tosen was about to parry Kamamura's attack. His expression was indifferent, just as it had been before. His tone was firm. "Of course, it's for justice, Captain Kamamura." Kurama's heartsight confirmed that he truly believed what he was saying. "Justice?" Naruto's voice rose. Tosen turned his head slightly in his direction. "Captain Uzumaki is known as the Little Sun. Everything I do is for justice." Kamamura raised his blade again. "Leave him to me," Naruto said quietly, blocking Kamamura's path. "His sword seems to carry some kind of poison. If you're hit, you'll be infected and weakened. You're not easy to deal with. Go handle the other hollows." "I can handle this. Bring him back to the Siriidii alive. We need to uncover the conspiracy." Kamamura was silent. He looked sadly at his friend, then vanished. The other Shinigami, including Aizen, retreated, leaving them room to fight. "Are you going to side with injustice, Captain Uzumaki?" Tosen began. Naruto pushed Kichiki Sojin toward a 7th Division captain. "The Soul Society is rotten," Tosen Kaname said softly. "The Siriidii is the most foul-smelling place in the Soul Society. You've been investigating me recently. Then do you know about my past?" Naruto's gaze shifted to his sword. "Is this about the story of the sword's previous owner?" "You know." Tosen was about to speak, but his tone wavered slightly. "The former owner of this blade was my friend. She died shortly after marrying into the Tsuneshiro family. Her husband murdered her. He killed colleagues over petty arguments and even killed his wife when she called him out on it. My friend was a good person. She wanted world peace more than anyone, and she had a stronger sense of justice than anyone. But she still died unjustly. And the man who killed her barely got punished. He was acquitted." Tosen Kaname's emotions surged, and his spiritual pressure fluctuated. "That's why I chose this path. If there isn't enough justice, then I'll become justice. Captain Uzumaki, you can tell when someone's lying, right?" Naruto narrowed his eyes, watching him. "Then you know that every word I've said is true." Tosen extended his hand. "I've always walked with justice in my heart. A place like this isn't for someone like you. Join me. Let us become righteous together and wipe away the evil in this world." Naruto said calmly, "So that's why you're doing this?" "That's ridiculous." Tosen began to withdraw his hand, his voice low. "Will even someone like you side with the Siriidii in the end? Are you going to cover up this evil?" Naruto put his hand on the hilt of his sword. "I don't want to cover up the darkness, but you're not righteous, either. How is your evil any different from theirs?" Tosen shouted angrily. "Then what do you want me to do? Forgive the person who killed my best friend? Yes, that would be a good and virtuous thing to do. But is goodness justice? Isn't it? If I can't avenge the dead, but I can live peacefully. That's a sin. Naruto's tone remained calm. I don't think you want to let go of your hatred, and you don't want to stop your revenge. I understand. From love, hatred is born. But you could have gone after the man who killed your friend. If you weren't strong enough, you could have trained until you were. Even if you felt you weren't strong enough, simply studying hollow powers wasn't enough. But why did you attack Captain Mako? Why did you attack Captain Six and his men? Were they also sins in your eyes? To satisfy their own selfish desires, they kill innocent people. How can that behavior be considered justice? Tosen said softly, they're just unfortunate sacrifices on the road to gaining power. Naruto drew his sword, disgust in his voice. Those words, ignoring innocent people. They're ugly, NaN Tosen, besides. Chapter 97 The Annoying Guy, Second Update. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The man with the dark green hair led the group. He sauntered over, eyes narrowed, head held high, looking down his nose with a cocky grin. Hey, Captain Uzumaki, pleasure to finally meet you. This kind of greeting was way out of line. As one of the 13 strongest captains in the entire Soul Society, a captain commanded respect. Traditionally, the captain of the 2nd Division headed the Shihoin family, and the captain of the 6th Division, the Kuchiki family. At the very least, a captain deserved the same courtesy as the heads of the 4 great noble families, but this guy. He skipped basic manners altogether, acting like he was superior. The Tsuneshiro family lived up to its reputation. Naruto already had a sour taste in his mouth when it came to this family, especially after learning about Tosen NaN the night before. Of the 4 nobles, the Tsuneshiro were the worst. They were once considered the top dogs of the nobility, but they cared too much about power, neglected their responsibilities, and pulled all sorts of dirty tricks. Now the Kuchiki family was the model for noble behavior. Is that how you address a captain? Naruto asked, letting out a wave of spiritual pressure. The green-haired man just grinned, unfazed. He was strong, about on par with Kuchiki Byakuya. The other nobles, however, were weak. Feeling the spiritual pressure, their faces paled, and they stumbled back, overwhelmed. Captain Uzumaki doesn't know me? The green-haired man feigned surprise. I thought I was pretty famous around here. He flashed a toothy grin. My name is Tsuneshiro Tokunada. Naruto's eyes narrowed, and his spiritual pressure intensified, becoming more suffocating. He'd heard that name before. Tokunada was the poster child for the Tsuneshiro family, a bully, a womanizer, embodying all the worst traits they passed down. But what stuck with Naruto most was that this Tsuneshiro Tokunada was the one Tosen NaN had accused of murdering his colleagues and his wife. Ah, so Captain Uzumaki has heard of me. Tsuneshiro Tokunada noticed Naruto's barely concealed disgust and didn't get mad. He just grinned wider. Guess I'm not so unknown after all. Naruto's voice was icy. What do you want, you jerk? Tsuneshiro Tokunada held out his hand, oozing confidence. Captain Uzumaki, hand over Tosen Kanami's body. Give it to you. Naruto scoffed. You're the last person who deserves to ask for something like that. You really hold a grudge. Tsuneshiro Tokunada waved his hand dismissively. Guess Tosen NaN filled your head with lies before he died, huh? He paused for effect. But he was a traitor. He was willing to hurt his own comrades for power. You actually believe what he said? Naruto walked closer with a tight smile. Tsuneshiro Tokunada still didn't lower his head, just glanced down at Naruto. I think you need a lesson in respect. Naruto suddenly punched the green-haired man in the gut. The spiritual pressure slammed into him. He instinctively doubled over. Naruto grabbed his hair and yanked his head up, his voice full of anger. First, when you're talking to a captain, show some damn respect. Second, I'm itching for a fight, and you just handed yourself to me. So thanks. And one last thing. Just because Tosen was a traitor doesn't make you the good guy. You're both equally rotten. Tsuneshiro Tokunada, though clearly hurting from the punch, didn't seem fazed, grinning like a maniac. You're such a hero, Captain Uzumaki. No wonder so many people in the Gotei 13 are on your side. But this isn't just my personal request. It's an order from the Tsuneshiro family. The Great Spirit Book Repository will record everything there is to know in the Soul Society, including the secret of Tosen's holification. He raised his head, meeting Naruto's gaze. This is one of the highest orders in the Soul Society. The Great Spirit Book Repository held all the information in the Soul Society, but it wasn't some kind of built-in power. It was just a collection of manually gathered and recorded data. Really? Naruto released him, his tone calm. Then come back when I've dug up his secret. Might be 100 years, 200 years, maybe even 1,000. But for now, get out of my sight. Tsuneshiro Tokunada's eyes narrowed, his grin widening. Kuchiki Byakuya stepped forward. Tsuneshiro Tokunada, the Kuchiki family agrees with Captain Uzumaki. We have more faith in Captain Uzumaki's abilities. Tsuneshiro Tokunada rubbed his stomach. Is that the combined answer from Captain Uzumaki and the Kuchiki family? I understand. Then I'll be looking forward to Captain Uzumaki's findings. See you around. He waved goodbye. Even though he left empty-handed, and bruised, he didn't seem discouraged. Naruto even thought he detected a hint of glee in his expression. Sorry, I dragged the Kuchiki family into this, Naruto said. Kuchiki Byakuya shook his head. The Kuchiki family has long despised the Tsuneshiro. They've abandoned any sense of responsibility or noble conduct. If power like this falls into their hands, who knows what kind of mess they'll make. Besides, it's a small matter. Compared to your kindness to the Kuchiki family, Naruto-kun, it's nothing. Naruto smiled. Kuchiki Byakuya said goodbye and left. Back in his office, Naruto sat at his desk, staring at the data and documents without any real interest in them. So the murderer was that guy Aizen, Kyubi said, sounding surprised. I thought it was the blind guy. Naruto, how did you know? Kyubi hadn't sensed a thing, Naruto explained softly, piecing together the events of the previous day for both Kyubi and himself. It's what I said earlier. He was just too weak. His swordsmanship was sloppy. If it had been Tosen Kaname from the start, he wouldn't have survived 2 of my attacks. There were only 2 captains there at the same time. We all know Captain Sajin's abilities. So it's clear that the Aizen who was with us from the beginning was an imposter pretending to be Tosen Kaname. The initial Tosen Kaname was there to throw us off. Aizen then replaced Tosen Kaname, who was pretending to be him. That's how Tosen Kaname could reappear so quickly and attack Vice Captain Kuchiki. Kyubi nodded, thinking, then suddenly exclaimed, wait, so before that, Aizen was being impersonated by Tosen Kaname? Does that mean the Aizen who was in front of the old man during the meeting was also fake, that even Captain Yamamoto was tricked by his illusion? Naruto pondered, then shook his head. I'm not sure about that. But it's likely. After all, the gate was blocked at that time. He can twist perceptions, but he can't erase facts entirely. If he went back in time, traces would be left behind. That's why I didn't confront him directly just now. Aizen had never fully revealed his hand, but in their interactions, Naruto had sensed something. Aizen had taught Naruto all the Kido spells he knew, and he could easily skip the incantations for spells below the 90th level, and that was just scratching the surface. Now that his deception was exposed, and he could fool Captain Yamamoto, Naruto wasn't sure he could beat him in a straight fight. The most important thing is to figure out how he managed to deceive everyone. Naruto paused. What kind of illusion did he use, and how do we break it? Kyubi muttered, illusion. The Uchiha clan are masters of illusion. Naruto shook his head, lost in thought. Speaking of which, that kid next to Aizen, Kyubi warned, Ikimara-jin. He gives me bad vibes. He has a really nasty aura. Even if he's your friend, you should be careful. After all, he's Aizen's lieutenant. Naruto paused and stood up. Kyubi's words struck a chord. Ikimara-jin, they got along well, but thinking about it, his relationships with others weren't that close, not even with Byakuya Kuchiki, who he trained Bankai with. Was he deliberately getting close to me? Kyubi was right. Naruto needed to find out. The next day, at the izakaya, Naruto had called Ikemara Jin out. "Hey, just Captain Naruto." The white-haired boy arrived, leaning over the table, with his trademark exaggerated smile. "Are you asking me out on a date?" He narrowed his eyes, already suspecting something. Naruto nodded, his face serious. "Jin, I need to ask you something. I need you to be honest with me." Kagura's hard eyes activated. "If it's Captain Naruto," Ikemara Jin sat down, tilting his head. "I can't lie to you." Naruto picked up his water glass and took a sip. "I want to know, Jin, what do you think of Captain Aizen?" Ikemara Jin said softly, "That's a tough question. Let me think about how to answer." He paused, opened his eyes, and his tone, though still gentle, was laced with menace. "I wish I could kill Captain Aizen with my own hands right now. But I'm not strong enough yet. I'm waiting for the right opportunity. That's why I'm staying by his side." Naruto was stunned. Kagura's heart eyes confirmed that this sentence was genuine, 100% true, without any deception. "There is another chapter in the evening. I will adjust it tonight and try to put the daily updates together." Chapter 98, Looking for Parents. Third update. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before Jin Ikemaru even voiced it, Naruto couldn't imagine he harbored such feelings for Aizen. "You want to kill him?" Naruto asked, staring at the silver-haired boy across from him. "Why?" Jin shook his head. "Sorry, Captain Naruto, I can't say." "It's not that I don't trust you," Naruto said. "It's just a secret more precious than my life." Kagura's heart eye confirmed the truth in his words. Naruto nodded. He didn't care what secrets Jin kept locked away, as long as he wasn't on Aizen's side. "Be careful of Sosuke Aizen," Naruto warned, changing the subject. "He's dangerous." Jin replied, "I'm always careful around him." He looked at Naruto, remembering something Aizen had said, there can't be two suns in the sky. Even though the captain of the 7th Division was younger, he already radiated a powerful light, pushing back the shadows. If only I'd met him sooner. Meanwhile, back in the Soul Society, the severely depleted 6th Division underwent an immediate reshuffling. Former Vice-Captain Sojin Kuchiki retired, and his son, Byakuya Kuchiki, stepped into the role. Inside the 6th Division barracks, Sojin Kuchiki lay shirtless on a bed, surrounded by a circle of people, besides Naruto, captains Retsu Unohana, Shunsui Kairaku, Mayuri Kuratsuchi, and 6th Division Captain Jinrei Kuchiki were there. "I didn't expect my son's situation to warrant so many captains," Jinrei Kuchiki said, bowing slightly. "I'm truly embarrassed." Shunsui Kairaku piped up, "I get why Captain Unohana and Captain Kuratsuchi are here, but Naruto, why did you drag me along? Teaching and research aren't exactly my strong suits." The other captains looked equally puzzled. Shunsui was an odd fit for this kind of gathering. This wasn't an izakaya. "If Captain Yukitake weren't under the weather, I would have invited him as well," Naruto said, shaking his head and looking at Mayuri. "Besides Mayuri, you're the people I trust most in the Soul Society. I called you all here, not just to figure out how to help Vice-Captain Kuchiki, but also to share something important." Mayuri Kuratsuchi curled his lip. Naruto paused. "It concerns the real mastermind behind the holification incident. Wasn't Tosen killed by you?" Mayuri asked, his tone greedy. "I heard you didn't give the body to the Tsuneyashiro family. Why not let me study it?" Naruto ignored him with a glance. Unohana and Kairaku frowned. They understood Naruto's implication. Tosen wasn't the true culprit. "Kanin Tosen isn't the real killer," Naruto said plainly, not holding back. "It's the captain of the 5th Division, Sosuke Aizen." Kairaku's frown deepened. "Do you have proof?" Naruto shook his head. "No. If I did, I would have arrested him or told the captain commander." Unohana asked, "Without evidence, how can you be sure it's him?" I have an ability that lets me tell if someone's lying, Naruto explained. Aizen didn't expect me to have it, and Tosen was my weak spot. He was forced to act to avoid detection. He'd considered recording it or something similar, but only the Ninetales could really see the truth. Anything he showed them, they'd only see what Aizen wanted them to. Kairaku stroked his chin. To prevent you from finding more flaws, he had to put the evidence against Tosen out in the open. So, he cut Tosen loose and let everyone else think he was the one responsible, hiding in the shadows. But even so. Naruto shook his head, looking sincerely at Kairaku. I'm not telling you this so you'll help me convict him. He couldn't produce any evidence, and even if he couldn't convince them to do something like that. He paused. I just want you all to be careful. Keep an eye on him. If you find anything suspicious, even better. Unohana wondered, how could he do all this, right under our noses, without being caught? It's only coming to light now, because of you. She didn't doubt Naruto. After all this time, she knew his character. Besides, both Naruto and Aizen were known as the Soul Society's good guys. There had never been any conflict between them. The chances of Naruto framing Aizen were slim to none, plus, Naruto wasn't asking them to join him in convicting Aizen, only to stay alert. If it weren't true, badmouthing someone behind their back would only do more harm than good, but could anyone really pull off something so perfect? He can manipulate the 5 senses, Naruto explained. If you see any of his movements, you'll be fooled by his abilities. And the Aizen Sosuke who was in the First Division's dormitory when Vice Captain Kuchiki's accident happened was actually Tosen, pretending to be him. Kairaku couldn't hide his surprise. Right under the Captain Commander's nose, Naruto nodded. So, the Captain Commander was fooled too? Unohana frowned even more. How does he activate that ability? We don't seem to interact with Captain Aizen much. Jinrei, Kuchiki and Mayuri also pondered this. They were sharp and could quickly come up with answers by recalling the past. Has anyone seen his Zanpakuto released? Kairaku asked, thinking out loud. Everyone nodded. For most Shinigami, the Zanpakuto's ability defines them. Most are wary of letting others know what their Zanpakuto can do, but Aizen was different. Everyone in the Shiraitii knew his Zanpakuto's abilities, even students who'd only been at the Shinigami Academy for 6 years. Even the 4 gatekeepers had witnessed his release. If what Naruto says is true, Kairaku said softly, then something's wrong with his sword. It can fool even the Captain Commander. This is insane. He was inclined to believe Naruto, but he had no solid proof. He tried to be more measured. He's really terrifying. Spiritual pressure is the source of power for the Shinigami. Captain Yamamoto was the oldest and strongest Shinigami, and his spiritual pressure was legendary. Any spiritual pressure that could affect him must be nearly as powerful. Just be careful and help me keep an eye on him, Naruto said, bowing. Kairaku scratched his head. Naruto, after dropping a bomb like that, the least you can do is buy me a drink tonight. It's been a while, Unohana said with a smile. Jinrei Kuchiki glanced at Byakuya. Byakuya immediately stood up, saying solemnly, we're counting on you, Naruto. Mayuri clicked his tongue and walked to Sojin Kuchiki. So, someone's senses get manipulated just by seeing him? Did Urahara get duped by this ability too? This is an interesting case. Even though Mayuri phrased it differently, he agreed that it was possible. He was more interested in the science than Aizen. He reached out and mobilized his spiritual power. A spell seal immediately appeared on Sojin Kuchiki's stomach. The 4-symbol seal, Mayuri said, surprised. So, that's what you wanted me to study before. You intended to use it here. Naruto explained to the others, the 4-symbol seal is a sealing technique I've mastered. It will seal the hollow power inside Vice Captain Kuchiki's body. While the problem of hollowification is temporarily solved, the hollow power is still there. If we remove the hollow power, Vice Captain Kuchiki will die. Byakuya's face flashed with panic. I asked Captain Kuratsuchi to try and solve this over a year ago, but there's no solution yet, Naruto said, glancing at Mayuri. So, I had to ask Captain Unohana. My healing level and Captain Kuratsuchi's research level may not be enough to solve this. Mayuri's black and white face contorted. It's not that I can't solve it. It's just that I haven't had enough time. I've only gotten some preliminary results. Sojin Kuchiki, lying on the bed, shook his head. If you can't remove the hollow power, it's okay. I'm happy just to have survived, and to not be affected by it in the future. Naruto's provocation was within Mayuri's limits. He knew what the kid was thinking. As long as he didn't bring up Kisuke Urahara, he wouldn't worry, but Kuchiki Sojin was so genuine. Mayuri narrowed his eyes and slapped him hard on the stomach. Don't underestimate me. You're talking to the director of the Technology Development Bureau. Even including that damn traitor, I'm the most capable researcher in the Soul Society. There's nothing I can't do. Unohana walked up and learned more about Sojin Kuchiki's condition from Naruto and Mayuri. Jinrei Kuchiki left to handle matters for Division 6, Byakuya stayed behind, ready to follow instructions. No more updates tonight. I'll prepare and try to keep a consistent update schedule in the next few days. New love story book by an old author, quality guaranteed. Chapter 99, Method of Temporary Liberation, First Update. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Nirvana showed off the results of their work. He channeled a rabbit and tossed it to Retsu Unohana. This rabbit, he said, his tone cold and borderline cruel, is what happens after we release the sealed power. Now that Captain Kuchiki has reached this point, using rabbits for experiments might not be the best use of our resources. Like I said. He turned to Naruto. Let's experiment with souls instead. How can you compare such a weak creature to a human being? That the others in the room reacted in different ways. Unohana's expression didn't change. Byakuya Kuchiki frowned slightly. Shunsui Kairaku and Naruto's eyes narrowed. If you even think about it, I'll cut you down, Naruto said, glaring at him. Captain Nirvana, don't go saying things you'll regret. Nirvana clicked his tongue, looked away, and stopped making eye contact with Naruto. He knew his suggestion would be rejected, but he couldn't resist saying it. Thank you for your concern, Captain Ye, Sojin Kuchiki said gently. But my life isn't valuable enough for someone else to sacrifice for me, especially since this doesn't threaten my life. Nirvana perked up. What about the corpse that Tosen wanted? Captain Uzumaki, if you would. He continued, since he's dead and guilty anyway, there's no problem with repurposing his remains. Naruto held out his hand and channeled a scroll. He didn't have any moral objections. Using the corpses of the dead to cure the living wasn't a big deal to him. Nirvana's eyes gleamed with greed as he reached out. Naruto waved him off, walked past him, and handed the scroll to Unohana. Retsu. You're giving it to me? Unohana was surprised. Nirvana whined, oh, come on, Captain Uzumaki. I'm the researcher here. I don't trust you with something this precious. Do you really distrust me that much? Naruto looked at him coldly. On the battlefield, I'd trust you with my life. But when it comes to research, you're a loose cannon with no self-control. Nirvana was completely obsessed with his work. His enthusiasm and drive for research were unmatched, even among other scientists, which also meant he had no boundaries. He'd do anything to achieve his goals. For almost 2 years, he'd been testing Naruto. After each warning, he'd restrain himself for a while, but within days, his old habits would resurface. It was just a matter of scale, whether he was blatant or secretive. If Naruto hadn't been stronger and Captain Yamamoto hadn't kept him in check, he might have tried to kidnap him. He turned to Unohana. Retsu, his tone softening. Captain Unohana, please hold on to Tosen's body. If Captain Nirvana wants to conduct research, please accommodate him when you have time. Unohana. Retsu looked at Nirvana and smiled slightly. Naruto really trusts me. Don't worry, Captain Nya will behave. Nirvana was about to protest, but hearing Unohana Retsu's words and sensing the steel beneath her gentle tone, he looked away again. Never mind, I'll let it go this time. Even with these restrictions, getting Naruto's permission to study Kaname Tosen's body was still a major win. They got to work. They began analyzing the 4 symbols seal and pondering the life form of the Jinchuriki. Naruto made himself available to them. Later that evening, when Naruto invited them out for drinks, Byakuya stepped up on behalf of the Kachiki family. With Sojin Kachiki needing to retire early, his grandson would skip his father and take over his grandfather's role as the head of the Kachiki family. Jinrei Kachiki was still old, but he could serve as captain for decades to come. It was just a matter of waiting until Byakuya Kachiki truly mastered his Bankai before retiring. Nirvana didn't show. He didn't like drinking with Naruto. The blonde kid always checked his cup after every sip. If it happened too often, he'd lose his temper. Even if he was trying every trick in the book to steal Captain Uzumaki's physical data, couldn't the guy show a little trust? At an izakaya, after a few drinks, Shunsui Kairaku clapped Byakuya Kachiki on the back. Even though you'll be the vice captain, don't always be so serious. You put too much on yourself. I am the heir to the Kachiki family, Byakuya Kachiki said, shaking his head firmly. I have to set a good example. He couldn't be worse than his father, or the natural counterexample that was the Tsuneyashiro family. Shunsui Kairaku sighed. He could persuade Naruto easily enough, but he couldn't dictate matters to Byakuya Kachiki. He tilted his head. Naruto, I heard your Bankai training isn't going so well. Unohana also looked over. It's not, Naruto said with a calm expression. There are some minor complications. Do you want my help? Kairaku asked. Naruto was surprised. Uncle Shunsui, aren't you the one who hates trouble the most? Kairaku Shunsui put down his glass angrily. If my sweet protege is having trouble that I can help with, I'll be happy to step in, okay? Even if I'm a guy. Naruto smiled. Kairaku Shunsui sighed, waved to the owner, and ordered 2 more bottles of good sake. He'd been baited by Naruto. Unohana Retsu said gently, Naruto-kun's progress has been a little unusual. Given Naruto's talent, he should have shown at least some sign of materialization by now. Never mind, the sword named Kyubi isn't Naruto's own inner power. Naruto shook his head. Thank you, Captain Unohana and Uncle Shunsui, for your concern. But this is a problem I have to solve myself, and it will take some time. Kairaku Shunsui frowned. Just be sure of yourself. He was worried if something was wrong with Naruto's body, but Naruto wasn't the type to suffer in silence. Since he brought it up and hadn't asked for help, it meant it wasn't a huge deal. Finishing speaking, he stood up and called out to Matsumoto Ranjaku and Isshin Shiba, who weren't far away. If there was no trouble, they should all relax and have a drink. Sosuke Aizen was a very cautious person. Since meeting Naruto, he never showed any weakness. His behavior hadn't changed. He was still the gentle captain of the 5th Division. He seemed to have quieted down. In the 10 years since that day, there had been no incidents in Rakangai or any unexplained disappearances of Shinigami. It seemed the warning had worked, but Naruto always felt that Aizen Sosuke was holding something back. That guy had the most intense and powerful light in his eyes of anyone he'd ever met. There was no way he'd back down because of a simple warning. Naruto watched him carefully, but it didn't affect his own life. The hollow sealed in Sojin Kachiki's body hadn't been extracted. It wasn't that the extraction technique hadn't been developed. Unohana Retsu and Nirvana confirmed that the 4 symbols seal would merge the life force of the 2 powers. If they wanted to separate them, they'd need to consider multiple factors. How long it had been sealed was one. The newer the seal and the less the 2 forces had merged, the easier it would be to separate them. The strength of the sealed power was another factor. If it was stronger than the Jinchuriki, it would be difficult. If it was weaker, it would be easier. Rabbits really didn't make good test subjects. After switching to larger animals, such as wild boars and black bears, they quickly tested those conditions. The hollow power in Sojin Kachiki's body wasn't that strong. It was on par with him, about the level of a vice captain, but the problem was, he was already weak, and the extraction would irreversibly damage his vitality. The honor of the Kachiki family was important, but a person's life was more important. Jinrei Kachiki made the final decision and confirmed that Sojin Kachiki didn't need to have the hollow extracted. The research goal shifted to coexisting with the power of hollow. This was exactly what Naruto needed most. It had been over 40 years since the Kyubi was sealed inside him. Their life forces had long been integrated, making separation difficult. The chances of completely lifting the seal without harming either of them were low. Even if it succeeded, it would take who knows how long. Before that, it was crucial to find a method to temporarily release the Nine Tails. Nirvana was a crazy person, since there was no way to extract it. Wouldn't it be great to turn the power of Hollow back into the power of death? In the past 10 years, he had developed a technique to temporarily remove the power from the body without affecting the Jinchuriki's life force. Of course, his original intention was to extract the Hollow power and try to transform it, but this technique really helped Naruto a lot. In the inner world, Kyuubi watched Naruto list the techniques and nodded thoughtfully. Even if I don't understand it, that guy is strong. To be able to do it to this point. Naruto sat cross-legged, nodding and smiling. When we return to the ninja world, we can test how far this technique can go. Don't worry, 10 years will pass quickly. Kyuubi grumbled, that Aizen guy is so annoying. As a pure energy body, its lifespan was virtually infinite, it could wait over 10 years without any problem, but, what a hateful guy. Naruto was about to say something when his senses tingled. He withdrew from his inner world, coming back to reality. He opened his eyes. Captain Jushiro Yukitake of Squad 13, along with Sentaro Katsubaki, pushed the door open and rushed in, looking anxious. Chapter 100. This is Captain Uzumaki. Second update. Please give me a monthly ticket. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Naruto stood up, a little surprised. Captain Yukitake. What brings you here? That he rarely leaves his post, as everyone knows. He glanced at Kagura, opening her eyes. Yukitake Jushiro shook his head. I'm Yukitake Jushiro. Even though he wasn't there, Shunsui and Naruto filled him in later. He knew what was behind Naruto's surprise, deliberately emphasizing his name. He could sense the genuine emotion in Naruto's response. Naruto smiled. You could have just sent Kaien to come get me. I need to ask you something, Jushiro Yukitake said, shaking his head. It would be rude to summon you through Kaien. He coughed, covering his mouth. Even though I'm not feeling well, I'm still able to walk. It's better to come in person. Naruto helped him sit down. What's up? It must be pretty serious if you came all this way, Captain Yukitake. Squad 13 sent a Shinigami to a spiritually charged area in the human world, and we haven't heard from them in almost 6 months, Jushiro Yukitake said gravely. Under normal circumstances, we just write it off as a lost contact incident. Being stationed in the real world is the most dangerous mission among the Godai 13, the level of power has an impact, but the real problem is isolation. There's only one Shinigami per area, fighting solo. If a hollow with any brains shows up, they'll exploit that, using tricks or just being strong enough to block the transmission of spiritual energy, preventing the Shinigami from calling for backup from Soul Society. That Shinigami is pretty much dead meat. That's why the Shinigami stationed in the real world are on rotation, usually replaced every 10 or 20 years, and more often in areas with high spiritual energy. It keeps the team members safe and allows for regular assessments of the human world. Even so, Shinigami still go missing every year, and they usually die in battle. Squad 13 is used to it. But this situation is different, Jushiro Yukitake continued. We've lost contact with the Shinigami, but the 12th Division reports that souls are still being guided and hollows are still being purged in that area. The Shinigami seems to be doing his job. Naruto was taken aback. So, we have two possibilities, Jushiro Yukitake sighed. One is that the squad member is still alive but refuses to contact the Soul Society, which would be. He paused, carefully choosing his words, defection. After serving too long, some Shinigami retire, but that's not the same as what's going on here. Retiring means relinquishing your position as a ranking officer, handing over your Zanpakuto for sealing, and no longer handling duties. You can live freely in the Soul Society but remain under the jurisdiction of your squad and can be called upon if needed. The key is, handing over the Zanpakuto and remaining inside the Soul Society. Living under the Godai 13's watch, you can't just quit the squad and leave the Soul Society. Any attempt to do so is considered defection. But he's still performing his duties as a Shinigami, Naruto mused. Killing hollows and guiding souls. A defector wouldn't do that. A defector would want to erase their existence, not attract attention from the Soul Society. Yukitake Jushiro nodded. Exactly. That's why I suspect there's a misunderstanding. Sending Squad 2 or Squad 9 would be overkill. Squad 13 is dealing with some internal matters, and Cayenne can't get away. So, I'm asking you, Naruto. You're the best person for the job. Naruto agreed. No problem. Which area are we talking about? Yukitake Jushiro whispered, a place called Karakura Town. Karakura Town, of all places, it's a well-known area charged with spiritual energy, and a key surveillance zone for the 12th Division. More powerful hollows are born there than elsewhere. In a back alley, an ape-like hollow scrambled through the corridors, chasing a Shinigami who was running for his life. Why are you running? The hollow grinned, its voice savage. You were so brave earlier, drawing your sword on me. What's with the change? Scampering around like a little mouse. Is this what a god of death is? The fleeing Shinigami didn't respond, just stumbled and fled into an alley. The hollow followed, but the alley ended in a high wall. The hollow gripped a wooden utility pole like an ape, greed in its empty eyes. What a shame. Dead end. Looks like this god of death has nowhere to run. Such effort. But this is fate, for you to become my meal. It dropped from the pole and lunged at the Shinigami. The Shinigami raised his sword, but his stance was awkward, untrained. After a few exchanges, he was clearly losing. Still struggling. The hollow, emboldened by its advantage, sneered. It's fate. Accept your fate. You're destined to be my meal. It didn't finish the sentence. The Shinigami suddenly looked up, his gaze sharp beneath his furrowed brow. You know what? Sometimes appearing weak to an enemy isn't weakness. It's a tactic. And right now, you've fallen into my trap. The hollow was stunned. A trap? Were other Shinigami lurking nearby? But he didn't sense any other spiritual pressure. In that moment of hesitation, the Shinigami removed a cross-shaped necklace. Power surged, the cross transformed into a broadsword. In a flash, it pierced the hollow's throat before it could react. The ape-like hollow stared in disbelief. Another sword. When had that appeared? And why was it released from the necklace? Was this the beginning of death? The man lowered his first sword, gripped the hilt of the broadsword with both hands, gritted his teeth, and with a final slash, destroyed the hollow. Watching the spirit being annihilated, he sighed in relief and touched his wound, wincing. That was a tough customer. If he hadn't deliberately played weak, lured it into a narrow space, and goaded it into close combat, using the second sword to strike the killing blow, he really would have died under those claws. He turned to leave, but a voice suddenly echoed in his ear. A clever tactic. It was a gentle, soft voice, but unmistakable in the quiet alley. But what's the deal with your second sword? That doesn't feel like Shinigami power. The man froze, incredulous. He turned around slowly. Someone was there. When did they arrive? He had scanned the alley before entering, confirming that no one else was present. The first thing he saw was blonde hair. Above the black Shinigami uniform, he wore a white feather garment. He wasn't very tall, barely over 5 feet. He stood on the high wall, looking down at him. Even now, he couldn't detect his spiritual pressure. He must have been watching the whole fight, a small body radiating immense pressure. Who are you? The man swallowed, asking nervously and carefully. You've gained the power of a Shinigami, Naruto said, jumping down from the wall and slowly approaching. But don't you recognize my outfit? The man shook his head. It seems you know nothing about Shinigami, so how did you get this power? Naruto looked up at him. The man had black hair and strong features. Around his neck, the cross necklace had returned to its original form. I inherited it from an uncle, he said stiffly, lowering his head, avoiding the blonde boy's gaze. Naruto waved his hand gently. Don't be so tense. Tell me the whole story. I have plenty of time to listen. The man took a deep breath and nodded. Naruto asked him to start from the beginning. From his childhood, he'd had the ability to see spirits since he was a kid, though at first, he could only see vague shadows. As he grew older, he could see them more clearly. Occasionally, he saw monstrous, hateful creatures, the monsters called hollows. A few years ago, he met a man wearing a black Shinigami uniform fighting a hollow in the city. He stepped in to help, and they became friends, but one day, 6 months ago, they encountered a powerful hollow that the Shinigami couldn't defeat. Before dying, he transferred his Shinigami powers to the black-haired man, who defeated the hollow and gained the Shinigami's Zanpakuto. I see, Naruto said. The black-haired man stood nervously. He had some idea about the blonde boy's identity. Was he the captain the Shinigami uncle mentioned? He seemed gentle, but talking to him, you could feel an incredible strength emanating from him unconsciously. His voice was weak. That's the truth, but I have no way to prove it. I know you're telling the truth, Naruto said with a grin. I can tell. Oh, I haven't asked your name yet. The man snapped to attention and announced loudly, Jinjo Kugo. My name is Jinjo Kugo,